This is a Film Stories original podcast.
When it comes to weight loss, no two people are the same. That's why Noom builds personalized plans based on your unique psychology and biology. Take Brittany. After years of unsustainable diets, Noom helped her lose 20 pounds and keep it off.
I was definitely in a yo-yo cycle for years of just losing weight, gaining weight, and it was exhausting.
And Stephanie. She's a former D1 athlete who knew she couldn't out-train her diet, and she lost 38 pounds.
My relationship to food before Noom was never consistent.
And Evan, he can't stand salads, but he still lost 50 pounds with Noom.
I never really was a salad guy. That's just not who I am. Even through the pickiness, Noom taught me that building better habits builds a healthier lifestyle. I'm not doing this to get to a number. I'm doing this to feel better.
Get your personalized plan today at Noom.com. Real Noom users compensated to provide their story. In 4 weeks, the typical Noom user can expect to lose 1 to 2 pounds per week. Individual results may vary.
Hello and welcome everyone to the Xcast X-Files Podwatch Episode 1. This is me, Tony Black, the host and creator of the Xcast, and with me is my number one, if I was Captain Picard. It's Carl Sweeney.
Hi Tony, nice to be here again.
It's great to have you, Carl. Basically makes you Commander Riker, so you're the handsome one with hair.
I mean, I've never been one for Star Trek, so I'll take that as a compliment. I'm not sure if it is.
It is. I promise
Okay,
you, it is.
good.
It is. So, yeah, loads of people probably listening to this going, "What are you talking about, Tony?" This is an X-Files podcast, which would be right, and this is a spin-off, I guess, from the Xcast because, well, you're probably wondering what the hell is a Podwatch. Well, a Podwatch is something that, and the reason I mentioned Star Trek is because I took a cue from my friends over at Trek FM, which is probably the best Star Trek podcast on the web, and I'm involved in them. I've got a podcast with them. And last year, over 2016, for the 50th anniversary of Star Trek, they did a project called From There to Here, where they watched and they podcasted about every episode of Star Trek that has been televised over the last 50 years. And that's something like 700 odd episodes, so it's a lot more than the X-Files. And they did 2 episodes a day. And over the course of 365 days in a year, they managed to do every Star Trek episode and movie, actually. A phenomenal achievement by quite a few guys and girls, including a few people who've come over to the Xcast and help us out every now and then. And obviously, once we found out about Season 11, and after the 201 Days of the X-Files in the lead up to Season 10, I thought, wow, why don't we take a cue from Trek FM and do what I've termed, because I couldn't find a better title, a Podwatch, which will be to go through the whole series. Am I crazy, Carl? This is the question.
No, I think it's a great idea because every time you rewatch the series, there's always stuff you reevaluate. So, yeah, like you say, Season 11's a nice opportunity to do that.
Well, in an ideal world, and obviously, you're obviously a big part of the behind-the-scenes planning on Slack, as are fair few others people who are involved in the Xcast. But I think, the idea is that we want to try and time this so this leads directly into Season 11. As we record, it is the start of June, so it's a significant way ahead of when you're going to be listening to this. And I've got in my head a potential date. In fact, I'll do this for fun, right? Because we'll see if this matches. Okay. So it's my clairvoyant powers are going to guess that it's September the 16th that you're listening to this. I'm going to be wrong, Carl, and I. It's going to be...
should we make some predictions? So, President Trump's been impeached.
Jeremy Corbyn is enjoying his third or fourth month as Prime Minister of the UK.
Yeah, that's it. I don't know. What else might have happened? I don't know.
We've found out that Season 11 is going to feature a reborn Krychek and Mr. X subplot, where they travel around the country in a camper van.
Well, that's actually a good point, isn't it? Because we're just getting a little bit of info about, who's writing and who may be directing. But by the time people are hearing this, presumably we'll have even more information, at our disposal. Well,
yeah, it should be filming by now, I think, or it should be well into filming the episode. So we should have an idea of certain things. As it stands, we know that from where we are now, we know that Glenn Morgan and James Wong are both back. So he's Darren Morgan.
Great news.
Great news, really great news. Chris Carter, obviously.
Yep.
Not so great news for a lot of people. Great news for me, because I love him.
It's great.
But,
yeah, we like him, don't we? We're
we
Carter
like
fans, so we're happy with that.
We're Carter fans, yeah. And I think Gabe Rotter potentially writing one, and then a random script that nobody's quite sure who's doing. So we're hoping for someone like Howard Gordon or Vince Gilligan or something like that. But we'll see. Could be someone new. Could just be Carter.
Let me make a prediction then. So I think that David Duchovny will write and direct one episode. That's my prediction.
That's a great prediction. Do you reckon he'd do something like really sort of comedic and mythological like he used to do?
I don't think he'd do something as comedic as Hollywood AD. I get the feeling he'd try and temper it a bit for this revival, but who knows? I'd be interested in seeing him do a straight up, some kind of scary epised, but he's bound to. Yeah, well, I think there's a good chance he'll pen one anyway. Let's see.
Yeah, maybe. That's I had not thought of that. That's a really good prediction. We will see. I think that's as likely as getting Gilligan and Gordon involved and people like that at this stage. So, maybe. You never know. Gillian Anderson might write. No, she won't. They've just about convinced her to do it, I think, let alone anything else. But yeah, so the idea is that the Podwatch will lead into Season 11. Now, most of the people who are listening to the Xcast will be listening to this. I'm guessing you watch the X-Files quite a lot, really, like we do. So I would say it's not too much of a stretch, and I don't know if you agree with me, Carl, but I'd say it's not too much of a stretch to suggest that people might be willing to watch 2 a day to go along with us on this.
Oh, minimum. At least 2 a day.
Because, in this episode, we're obviously doing this little introduction about what the Podwatch is and how it's going to work. But we're also going to talk about the pilot. Because we're starting from the beginning. So the whole idea of the Podwatch is we're going to go through every episode two at a time, a bit like the From There to Here Star Trek thing, which I mentioned before. So tomorrow it will be Deep Throat, Squeeze. The day after it will be Conduit, The Jersey Devil, etc., etc., etc. And it will go on like that every day. And every day, Carl, though, there's no break. There's going to be no break for like Christmas or anything. You're going to get an Xcast episode every day for the next 100 odd days.
So this is Saturdays, Sundays, is it? Bank holidays?
Bank holidays, come what mays, right?
Yeah.
You're going to get an Xcast episode. Now, I think this could go one of 2 ways, Carl. It could either be the best thing people listening to this have ever heard, or they will think, that is too much Xcast.
I think the former, but let's wait and see.
Well, we can hope so. All I will promise you is, and this is where the big sigh of relief comes, Carl, it won't just be me every day talking at you for the next 3 months. I promise. We've managed to drag in pretty much everybody who has guested or co-hosted the Xcast over the last 2 years to come back and get involved in this, including a few new people as well, who are potentially going to be, who will be guesting on the podcast when we do get to Season 3, ultimately, and we go back into the normal format. But so we've got loads of people. We've got people hosting, we've got people editing, we've got people guest hosting, we've got people guesting, people who, it will fluctuate a little bit. The people who've signed up for certain episodes may have to drop out for various different reasons, but we're going to have a fair few people talking X-Files, aren't we, over the next 3 months? It's
going to be like, a carnival of X-Files, isn't it?
Is it going to be like Humbug?
It's going to be somewhat like Humbug, yes, but even more amusing, hopefully. But,
yeah, can I be Mr. Nut?
What, you want to check Scully's plumbing? Is that what
you're moving swiftly on. Yes, I think it will be. Yeah, Carnival of X-Files is a good descriptor, really. So the whole point, the whole introduction of this is essentially to reiterate: the Podwatch will be every day, 2 episodes of the X-Files, and we would love you to watch the episodes and listen along with us. The episodes are designed to be short and swift, so we will roughly go for about 20 minutes or so each day. So we're not going to be doing like 2-hour-long podcasts a day. That's just too much for anybody. So we think about 20 minutes a day where you can enjoy us talking about 10 minutes apiece about every episode of The X-Files over the next 3 months. So it'll be exciting to see what people think, won't it, of the show?
It will, yeah. And I think the good thing will be that the closer we get to new episodes, people's excitement should be rising at the same time. So it should be very rewarding, I think.
Let's hope so. Let's absolutely hope so. So, without further ado, we're going to get the Podwatch cracking right now. And, that's the idea of it. So now you know what the Podwatch is. Let's begin this experiment that will either kill me or kill me. Let's begin the X-Files X-Cast Podwatch. So the pilot, Carl, where it all began. This first aired in 1993 at the very beginning of the show, written by Chris Carter, obviously, directed by Robert Mandel, and introduced not just Agents Mulder and Scully to the world, but also David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson, who, they weren't at all household names, were they, before this? No,
I think Duchovny had a bit of a profile, didn't he? But Anderson was pretty much new on everyone's radar, wasn't she?
She was a complete unknown. Yeah, she'd done the odd film, I think. DD was most famous for Red Shoe Diaries.
Yeah.
At this point. Which, of course, I never watched as a kid.
No. When are we going to do the Red Shoe Diaries cast?
Well, we've been doing lots the tie-in sort of things, like when we did a podcast about the After, and we did, without spoiling too much, we've got Space Above and Beyond that will be coming next year, and we're going to talk about that. Yeah, maybe the Red Shoe Diaries is one to put on the list.
Maybe. It deserves some close analysis, definitely.
It would be an adventure, wouldn't it? It would be an adventure. The pilot, though, is a real, I think, a really strong introduction to the world of the X-Files. I've always thought that maybe Deep Throat is slightly more of an episode I prefer as the beginning of the lore of the mythology. But I think the pilot just really sort of sets its stall out, doesn't it, with alien abductions and missing time and bright lights in the sky and creepy forests and everything like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think Deep Throat's a better episode, but I think the pilot's a good episode. I think it's a very good introduction to the series, and it's a good episode in its own right. Like you say, a lot of the stuff that we expect from the X-Files is there from day one, isn't it? But on the other hand, you've got elements which don't really align with the rest of the series. How young Scully looks is quite striking, and then you've got elements like the title sequence isn't there yet, if I remember correctly, and you get that introductory credit, don't you, about how it's all based on actual documented events.
Yeah.
So it sort of stands apart from the rest of the series in a few ways, but it comes across with such, like, the performances and everything, very enthusiastic. I mean, I don't think they'd really nailed down exactly their performances as Mulder and Scully yet, but they're clearly having a great time, and it's a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, I think the building blocks are there, aren't they? You've got the odd Mulder line in that where he's being a bit laid back and one-linery, and I think in some respects Scully was probably the harder character for Gillian Anderson to find in a way, because a lot of Mulder is on the page, really, in the one-liners, in the the dialogue and everything like that. Whereas Scully, you've got to work a bit harder, really, as an actress to find who she is, and that's why she does such a good job straight away, and that's why it's great that Chris Carter didn't bow to the will of Fox, who wanted a Pamela Anderson, blonde with super big boobs knockoff, didn't they, at the time? Which Carter was like, no, she's attractive and smart as well, and they cast an actress accordingly, really.
Yeah, I agree. And what they definitely get right is the sort of dynamic between the two of them is, the kind of the intellectual to and fro is there from the very beginning, isn't it? And it's such a, throughout the whole run of the series, that's such a rich theme that they sort of delve into. And that's why you can forgive some of the other aspects which are a bit more in development at this stage.
Yeah, like some of the effects and I suppose some of the plotting and things like that, and certain elements which still feel a little bit like early 90s slightly creaky TV, I guess. And and the weird sort of, I think, continuity disparity as well, because this is set in 1992, and I've never understood that. I've never understood why, and also what happened in that year. Like I think there's a whole comic book series waiting to be written here, like the missing Mulder and Scully year.
Yeah, I mean, we know Scully gets a haircut, obviously, between this and Deep Throat. That's a good point. It's quite unusual, actually, isn't it? But the dates are on the on-screen credits, which is unusual. That doesn't really happen very often anyway. So yeah, the series issues with continuity are apparent as soon as episode 1 and 2, which is quite nice.
Yeah, right away they're honest about that. And of course, I think if you're looking at continuity, some of the better handled stuff is things like, the fact in this episode you've got Section Chief Blevins and the other FBI guy who I can always remember the actor's name, but I can never remember the character's name. The actor's called Ken Camru.
That's right, yeah.
But I can never remember the character's name. I don't even know if he got a name, did he? He was just FBI guy.
He may just be something like FBI agent number 2 or something. I'm not really sure. But what do you think about Blevins then? Because I've always wondered why... Because he's in this, isn't he? He's in Conduit. What happened to him, basically? And then we don't see him again until Gethsemane, do we? Skinner comes in, yeah.
It does make you wonder, really. I think, because they go through a succession of bosses, don't they? There's also potentially Section Chief McGrath in Fallen Angel, and I think they just felt, I get the feeling they just felt like, it doesn't really work. Cuddly old granddad doesn't really work. Nasty, fat bloke doesn't really work. Oh, Skinner. He works. Angry bald man. He works.
That could be it. Skinner was a bit more believably kind of abrasive, wasn't he? So, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. And, obviously you've got the smoking man in this as well. Mm-hmm. Just standing there in the office or walking past Scully, and she does that little look. So who the hell is this guy? And then, of course, at the end, he puts the little chip in the Pentagon, which is that lovely mirror thing with the Erlenmeyer flask, isn't it, in the end? That lovely mirroring image.
I love that ending, the idea that the government is taking this evidence and it's kind of like a peek behind the curtain a little bit, isn't it? And... Yeah, that's definitely one of the elements that the pilot gets right, I think. Yeah,
I think it sort of establishes not just the weird aspect and that they're going to be off investigating, strange cases, the paranormal, but also that there's this secret Raiders of the Lost Ark style warehouse conspiracy thing going on that is, in the know, and these guys aren't in the know, and he's covering something up. It doesn't matter. You don't know what it is at this stage. You don't know. It takes a couple of years, really, before you really get to understand more of the mechanics of it. But at this stage, there's conspiracy. And, Mulder talks about it, doesn't he, in the scene with Scully, where he talks about connections in Congress and people trying to shut down his work and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's already like this sense of mythology and world building there, I think. And there's already... One thing I've always liked about the show is that Mulder has a real sort of history before we even get to this. There's loads of things that he's done and he's been involved with that the show only really teases at. And now we're getting more in the, the books and the comics now, which is good.
Yeah, I think Carter was always very good at adding in these little sort of offhand details, and then people like Morgan and Wong were good at sort of teasing them out a bit more later on. So things like you say, the connections in Congress is a throwaway, it's a one line here, I think.
Yeah.
And it's a bit late, I think, in a couple of Morgan and Wong episodes that's developed slightly. Obviously, we get the stuff about Samantha, and it's such a shrewd inclusion, isn't it? The stuff he says about Samantha, because obviously that'll be a big part of the backbone of the series for many years afterwards.
Yeah, that he just layers things in, drops a few little, I suppose, like plot bombs that could potentially go off later, and character pieces and things like that we can pick up on. And if you look back, there is a lot of that in the pilot. There is a lot of that there, coupled with certain bits of evocative imagery. I'll never forget the alien, whatever it is, in the coffin. Billy Soames or whatever his name is.
Yeah.
Not Billy. Is it Billy? There's Billy Miles.
Ray Soames.
Ray Soames. That's it. Ray Soames. Yeah, that will always stay with me. I always remember being creeped out by that. So it's got a good blend of all of these typical X-File elements, even if, like you say, it's still trying to find its feet, I suppose, as a piece of storytelling in a way.
Yeah, I'd say from the very get-go then, I'd say sort of 70% of what you expect to see from the X-Files is sort of present in that pilot. And then the rest of it is just kind of fine-tuning as they go along, and they sort of really figure out what they're doing.
I'd say so. I'd agree with that. I'd say that it's, the strong building blocks are there, and then they pretty much, pretty swiftly with Deep Throat, they get on with it and they build on that. So yeah, we're not going to talk about Deep Throat though. That's the province of tomorrow's guest and host, who will be taking over from us and talking about Deep Throat and Squeeze for some Tombs action. So we hope you've enjoyed our first Podwatch, talking about the pilot and introducing the Podwatch itself. And we really, really, really hope that you join us on this wild ride of X-Files every day for the next 3 months, going through the entire show. And you'll be back, Carl. You're going to be hosting and guesting on a few more.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm looking forward to it.
It's going to be great. It's going to be fantastic. So the usual notices: find us on Twitter at the Xcast. Find us, the X_cast, that should be. Find us on Facebook, our page, and our group, the Xcast X-Files Podcast Fan Group. and find us on iTunes as well. Just drop us a line about this. Email us at thexfcast@gmail.com and let us know what you think about the podcast and the Podwatch. And join in and let us know your thoughts on these episodes as we go through. So, the Podwatch begins. Until next time, as ever, trust no one.